Brown here, and yet another episode of Libertarian Heretic, this one to be entitled What Libertarians Are Not, or Shouldn't Be, Knee-Jerk Anti-Authoritarians. Steve Brown, you know who I am. Okay, I thought I'd talk about this. I've got a few somewhat disconnected thoughts about this. There is a certain type of person who infests the libertarian movement, and infest is no idle verb. Doesn't really have a comprehensive notion of what liberty, what freedom is. They're simply what I call knee-jerk anti-authoritarians. A typical example, for example, is the middle-class white cop hater. As a friend of mine, a violence professional, likes to point out, if you're middle class and white and you hate cops, you're a fucking idiot. They reject any kind of authority over them, like, well, I'll make a rolling stop at the stop sign if I want to, if no one's around. Actual example, by the way. They reject any kind of structure, any kind of organization or something. I remember a conversation with someone who I believe was actually a practicing attorney, who said, I said, what about local organizations like ditch authorities? If you're not from a rural area that's very wet, you don't know what that means. Ditch authorities, soil and water boards, that kind of thing. These are organizations usually composed of citizens who do it part-time, who organize agreements among local landowners, land users, as in people who make their living off the usufruct of the land, for things like maintaining the drainage ditches, for making sure that my agricultural practices don't mess up your land. That happens. Folks, for example, if you live by a river and you want to make a dike, again, real example, you want to make a dike. You want to make a dike that prevents the periodic flooding of your land or something. If you do, you have to make sure that it doesn't, in fact, divert the water in such a way that it washes out your downstream neighbor's property, as happened when a man was told not to do that, and that happened. As I said, knee-jerk anti-authoritarian, people who think there should be no rules or no structure. And a free society is, if nothing else, a structured society, because liberty is, by definition, a relationship of men in society. Society has structure, it has complexity. Robinson Crusoe on his island was perfectly free. So what? So what? And by the way, the first human being he met, I believe he made into a servant and quasi-slave. But at any rate, this is the kind of people you find. Oh Jesus! Another example, for example, are libertarian discussion pages on Facebook, other social media. Facebook is basically the only one that matters anymore. The worst run ones, look at them. They become overrun with, like anti-Semitic, Holocaust-denying neo-Nazis, racists of various kind, truly hateful people, the kind of people who open up a discussion with an insult. These are, sometimes you get the impression they're, not bad people, that, there's nothing wrong with them, but a good ass whooping wouldn't cure. But they seem to gravitate towards libertarianism because, one, because they know they can be as rude as they like without getting that ass whooping, which is something we ought to consider. Or more sinister, they believe that a philosophy of freedom, which, again, they have no real coherent idea of what freedom is, but they believe that it justifies their personal kinks. There have been some scandals we'd rather forget about child molesters. Worse, there are people here who say, well, why shouldn't children be allowed to engage in consensual relationships, totally ignoring the fact that very young children are not really in a position to make irrevocable decisions about their life. This is heresy to some, but this one here is a dad and knows it firsthand. This brings to mind something called, that I have long called the Haight-Ashbury effect. For those of you who are too young to remember, and I wasn't there either, I heard about it from the other coast, and we had our own little Haight-Ashbury on the East Coast too. But the summer of love, when hippies, who again, like a lot of modern day people who were attracted to libertarianism, thought that it meant a total absence of rules and authority, having rebelled against their parents' authority, which may have been a bit heavy-handed at the time, decided, so the cure for bad rules is no rules. All right, so they descended on Haight-Ashbury, and by all accounts, for a little while, it was beautiful. You know, like the Cheech and Chong routine. Hey, man, we chair, man. Things are so groovy because everybody chairs. Well, what happened? Almost immediately, predators, sensing blood in the water, descended on the place. That's what happens every time there is a significantly large gathering of the overly naive who do not believe in rules, authority, and structure. Back to the social media pages. What happens on those pages? They go to shit. I dropped out of one. I said, all right, folks, you know, the moderator kept insisting this was free speech, free speech, free speech. No, it's not. This is your forum, your place, your rules. That's what happens on my threads there. Hell, I blocked someone I liked because he would, because he kept using obscene and abusive language towards a lady who was my guest on that thread. And I said, cut that out. And he said, I don't like it, block me. I said, okay, you're blocked. Pity, I'm going to miss him. The Better Run pages, a libertarian page, is run by a friend of mine, Tim Starr, who has rules. He said, no abusive language, and in particular, one insult gets you an immediate ban. You're not a libertarian. Boom, you're gone. The results are plain. They're like night and day. Tim Starr's page has lively, substantive discussions. The other page, I haven't looked in it in a long time, I think it may not be there anymore, had nothing substantive to talk about, nothing, no substantive discussion, nothing but degenerated into a childish series of insults, and of course, you're not a libertarian. By the way, I had that directed at me once, a fellow who said, if you don't believe in open borders, and by open borders he meant no borders, then, that's the foundation, you can't be a libertarian. My answer was, okay, so who died and made you libertarian? God. How's that for anti-authoritarian? Like I say, this is something that libertarianism is not or should not be. What's distressing about this is when I try to discuss the structure of liberty, and I suggest that people learn something about it and get experience. Remember my formulation? This movement is theory heavy and experience light. There is a resistance to it, a militant resistance to getting anything like experience. I suggest people run for city council. I suggest just drop in on a city council meeting, drop in on a county commission meeting, and see the way they're run. There's a different feel. I'm told that different feel is evident in the House of Representatives versus the Senate. There's a different energy, a different way they do things. And of course, a different set of concerns addressed. If you want to see quote-unquote democracy on the local level, go to a small-town city council, go to a rural county commission. This is a point I wanted to get out of the way, and I think I will finish this pretty quick. So I would like you to think about that and I would like to bring this up. This is going to have a lot of downstream consequences I would like to talk about later. So for now, this is Steve Brown, a libertarian heretic, writer, anthropologist, and awesome dad, signing off. Nighty night or morning morn.